Artlist.io.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bald Eagle Podcast. I'm Shawn Cressman. I am the Bald Eagle. All right. This is today is Wednesday, August 24th. Just shuffling to get together today. This is the Bald Eagle Podcast. I am Shawn Cressman. I am the Bald Eagle. Now, the Bald Eagle Podcast is a 100% Philadelphia Eagles podcast. So we're not talking about, we don't really talk about any other teams. I wouldn't say not any other teams. We talk about teams that may impact the Eagles. So we might also talk about, some things that affect the NFC East, our NFC opponents, right? So we'll talk a little bit about our opponents, but it is 100% Eagles. Now, the Bald Eagle Podcast has 3 rules. The most important rule, number 1, is no politics. I don't ever talk about politics. I hate politics. I don't care what side you're on. I don't want to talk to you about it. It doesn't matter to me. So we don't talk about politics at all. The other rule is no personal information. So I don't really talk about my own personal information. Who cares? But I also don't talk about the players' personal lives. I don't care what they do in their personal lives unless it affects their play. If it affects their play, we'll talk about it. I mean, I guess technically we sort of talked about Carson Wentz's personal life when he was doing a real shitty job, because we just kind of speculated what it could possibly be, right or wrong. And then lastly, it's not censored. I say whatever I want. I don't give a shit. Okay, so we have so I am part of, or the Bald Eagle Podcast is part of the Philly Sports Alliance, a whole network of shows, and I'll go over the whole list at the end of the show like I always do. But we have some sponsors. We have, and you can see it scrolling at the bottom here. Our main sponsor is La-Terrain Watches. And if you go to www.laterrain.com, check it out down at the bottom. For those guys on Instagram, it is La-Terrain, and terrain is spelled Touraine. Pretty difficult to figure out on your own. That's why I have it scrolling at the bottom. But check them out. They sell a bunch of watches, other apparel like sunglasses, for both men and women, some at a discount, some are very high quality. So a wide range of different types of apparel that you can get there at La Terrain Watches. So check them out. And now, when you're buying all the things that you want to buy at La Terrain, make sure you go to the comments or the coupon section and put in PSA, and you'll get a discount. You're way too far ahead, Dylan. I have no idea what we're going to draft. And something I've disclosed on the Bald Eagle Podcast is I am 100% Philadelphia Eagles, but I do not watch college. So college is kind of unknown for me. And also it really depends on how Jalen Hurts does this year. I'm not very optimistic about him, but just like anything, he could surprise, right? Now, the Bald Eagle Podcast, one of the most things that makes us unique, and it'll start in a few weeks now, is that during the regular season and the postseason, we have the most in-depth play-by-play analysis. So we go over every single play of the previous game, play-by-play. I'll talk about every play, or at least tell you about every play, and then I expand on the important ones. I tell you, I take hours to review the all-22 so I can see what everybody's doing on each play. I look at the tackle box so I can make sure everybody's blocking properly, and I'll tell you what they didn't do wrong, what they were supposed to do, which was a long list when we were talking about Carson Wentz and his horrible year. So that is what makes us unique here at the Bald Eagle Podcast, the most in-depth play-by-play analysis of any sports show that I am aware of that exists. I put that as a disclosure that I'm aware of. I could be wrong, but I don't know anybody that goes over every play. Now, I mentioned we have a sponsor, La Terrain. We also have partnered with Philly Sports Trips. So go to phillysportstrips.com. We're filling a bus to go to our game week 3 at Washington. So a trip down to Washington, D.C. And it's not just a regular school bus, uncomfortable school bus. It's a chartered bus, real nice one. When you go to purchase the tickets, which are about $325, I think, each ticket, which gets you the bus ride, Gets you a T-shirt, I think. Gets you all-you-can-eat food and drinks, and from what I understand, some pretty decent tickets on a lower level. It also includes some appearances by former Eagles. I believe Hollis Thomas might be there. And the bus that we're on, and how you get on our bus actually, is by putting our name, PSA, Philly Sports Alliance, in where you heard of the trip. And they're going to put us all together. And it's not just Philly Sports Alliance people. It's also going to be other Philly sports media guys that have podcasts and things like that. So an opportunity to hang out with a bunch of Eagles fans. I guess there's supposed to be things happening on the trip down. Ryan Reese is one of the hosts of a couple of shows on our program, and he knows a lot more information about it. But go to Philly Sports Trips, go to the Washington game, and sign up for our trip down to DC to heckle Carson Wentz. He's gonna have a shitty game anyway, so we don't have to do a lot of heckling. All right, let's get to our countdown. We always count down to something. There's always something to look forward to in the NFL season, right? This time we're counting down to our third and final preseason game against Miami. It's 3 days from now on Saturday, August 27th at 7 p.m. Now, before that, today and tomorrow, we have joint practices with the Dolphins in Miami Gardens. And, just like last year, Nick Sirianni is putting much more emphasis on these joint practices than he is preseason games, which is why against Cleveland, not a single one of our starters played. I guess you could accept Cam Jurgens, technically not a starter. Will be if Kelsey can't come back in time, which hopefully he does. So we got the preseason game coming up. Regular season kicks off Thursday, September 8th, Buffalo at the Raiders, 8:20 p.m. And then our week 1 is against Detroit in Detroit. That's Sunday, September 11th at 1 p.m. Week 2 at home against Minnesota, Monday Night Football, September 19th, 8:30 p.m. Week 3 at Washington. That's that trip that we're taking down to D.C., Sunday, September 25th at 1 p.m. game. Week 4 at home against Jacksonville, Sunday, October 2nd, 1 p.m. Week 5, traveling to Arizona, Sunday, October 9th, 4:25 p.m. We have a Sunday night football game at home against the Cowgirls, Week 6, October 16th at 8:20. We have an early Week 7 bye. Week 8 at home against the Steelers, Sunday, October 30th at 1 p.m. Week 9 at Houston, Thursday night football, November 3rd, 8:15 p.m. Week 10 against the Washington Commanders at home, Monday Night Football. That'll be Wentz's return to the link, November 14th, 8:15 p.m. Week 11 at Indianapolis, Sunday, November 20th at 1 p.m. Week 12 at home against the Packers, Sunday Night Football, November 27th, 8:20 p.m. Week 13, another home game against Tennessee, this time Sunday, December 4th at 1 p.m. Then we have a string of 3 away games. Week 14 at the Giants, Sunday the 11th, December 11th at 1. Week 15 at Chicago, Sunday, December 18th at 1. And then Week 16 at the Cowgirls, Saturday, December 24th, 4:25 p.m. Hopefully Christmas comes early. You know what I mean? Week 17 at home against the Saints, Sunday, January 1st at 1 p.m. And last but possibly least, if we don't need it to get into the playoffs, Week 18 against the Giants at home, either Saturday or Sunday, January 7th or 8th, time to be determined. This is the third year we've entered the season with an away game. This is the longest streak since the 2011-2013 season. I mentioned, that we have our first string of 3 away games. Before that, we don't have any back-to-back away games. So that's our first streak of back-to-back away games in Week 13. And then I mentioned we closed the season out with 2 home games, which is nice. I don't like our early bye. The Cowgirls and the Giants have a Week 9 bye, which is a little better. The Commanders have a Week 14 bye, which I like much better. And then we're one of 13 teams that have 5 primetime games this year, which is the most we've had since 2018. Since 2000, we've had the second most primetime games. Unfortunately, the team that has had the most, we've had 94. They've had 100. That's the Dallas Cowgirls. And we played the Cowgirls in primetime every year since 2007. Technically, in 2014, we didn't play them in primetime, but we did play a nationally televised game on Thanksgiving. And the strength of schedule, the NFC East has all the easiest strengths of schedule, which is the opponent's winning percentage the previous year. We are third easiest at .464. The Cowgirls and the Commanders tie for the easiest at .462, and the Giants are fourth easiest at .465. The Rams have the hardest schedule at .567 opponent winning percentage. And then we end the season Sunday, February 12th, 2023. We're all going to pack the State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona to watch the Eagles beat whoever they play against in Super Bowl 57. Wishful thinking, right? All right. Draft recap. Now you're going to say to yourself, Shawn, every time I watch the Bald Eagle podcast, which is every Wednesday at 6, you're always going over the schedule. You're always starting the show with the draft recap. And you're right, because I have a horrible memory. Right, I probably wouldn't remember half this stuff if I didn't constantly say it every week. Right, so hopefully it helps you too with your memory. So let's go over the draft recap real quick. First round, 13th overall, defensive tackle Jordan Davis from Georgia. Massive defensive tackle, having a good camp so far. Then we traded 18th and 101st overall to Tennessee for wide receiver A.J. Brown, having a great camp, physical, exactly what we needed. Second round, 51st overall, center Cam Jurgens, a very good replacement for Jason Kelce. Third round, 83rd overall, linebacker Nakobe Dean from Georgia. Sixth round, 181st overall, linebacker Kyron Johnson from Kansas. Haven't heard a lot from him. And then sixth round, 198th overall, tight end Grant Calcaterra from SMU, who's having a decent camp too. We have a couple of undrafted rookie free agent signings. I forgot to go. We cut a couple people. Let me see if we cut any of those guys. I think we cut Blackwell. Okay, so if I take out Josh Blackwell, who was just cut, and we'll go over that under roster updates in a moment. We still have Reed Blankenship, the safety from Middle Tennessee. He's an undrafted rookie. Running back Kennedy Brooks from Oklahoma. A little slow in my opinion. I wish we would have kept the other guy that we just recently cut. I would have preferred to keep what's his name? See, this is why I always talk about stuff. DeAndre Torrey. I thought he's looked pretty decent against Cleveland. Of course, that was their third string, but looked quicker. Looked like he was able to find the hole better, but we cut him. We also have wide receiver Britton Covey from Utah, Mario Goodrich, corner from Clemson, Josh Jobe, corner from Alabama, who has apparently been making has been doing well in training camp, and sounds like he'll have a spot on the team. Josh Sills, offensive lineman from Oklahoma State, Carson Strong, quarterback from Nevada, and Carrick Wheatfall, wide receiver from Fresno State. Carrick Wheatfall, by the way, is the only team that tried out at rookie, or the only person that tried out at rookie minicamp and made the team. All right, let's get to some game highlights. So we beat the Cleveland Browns in preseason. All the starters, with the exception of Cam Jurgens, like I mentioned, he is probably going to be a starter if Kelce can't make it back by week 9. But none of the other starters dressed for the game. I mentioned before, just like last year, this seems to be an emphasis of the coaching staff. They prefer to focus more on having the starters play in those joint practices versus having them play in preseason. So the starting offense was quarterback Gardner Minshew. In the offensive line, we had left tackle Andre Dillard, left guard Jack Anderson, center Cam Jurgens, right guard Sua Opeta, and right tackle Jack Driscoll. Wide receivers were Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor, and Jack Stoll was considered a receiver. Running back was Boston Scott, and the tight end officially was Richard Rodgers. Gardner Minshew, of course, I said he started, and he had with the help of a couple of decent Boston Scott runs, took the offense down the field for an opening drive touchdown. So, we played pretty well against, a similar opponent, right? Second string guys. Minshew played most of the game. He was 14 for 17, which is an 82.3% completion percentage. He threw for 142 yards, and his rating was a 101.5, which is pretty good. Not bad. A lot of short passes, a couple of decent, a handful of deeper passes, but most of them were short. Gainwell, who I've been hearing he's struggling in camp. I have not heard very good things from him in training camp, although I thought he had a pretty decent game, again, against second stringers, but 11 rushes for 46 yards, which is a 4.2 average, and 1 touchdown. He didn't have any receptions out of the backfield, though. 4.2 per carry is pretty decent. 5 plus would be the goal, but 4.2 isn't so far off. Dion Kane, I'm sure you've heard about him, or perhaps seen him in the highlight reels. A couple of really nice catches that Reagor wouldn't make, right? Catches that other, maybe Hightower could have, I don't know, but really good catches. He led the receivers. He had 5 receptions on 7 targets for 66 yards. That's a 13.2 average. But of course, the best catch of all night, you probably saw the clip, was Devin Allen. Against a second, maybe third string secondary, he just blew right by him. Sinnett, Reed Sinnett threw a perfect pass, 55 yards for a touchdown. Just ran right by everybody in the secondary. I don't know if he'd be able to do that against a first string secondary, but I hope he would. I mean, he's a track star, so he's really fast. Our defensive starters were the defensive tackles were Milton Williams and Jordan Davis. Defensive ends were Marlon Tuipulatu and Teron Jackson. Linebackers were Patrick Johnson and Devion Taylor. Corners were Josiah Scott, Zach McPherson, and Josh Jobe. And the safeties were Kayvon Wallace. And Nakobe Dean was playing at safety, apparently. Our defensive line, especially in the beginning, did a really good job of pressuring Dobbs, but did not do a very good job of containing him. On Cleveland's first drive, he had a 36-yard scramble, and then he had a 7-yard run to score their first opening touchdown. He didn't do a lot of running, but when he did, it was impactful. He had 4 runs for 47 yards, which is 11.8 average and 1 touchdown. Overall, our defense struggled against the run. So as deep as our offense might be, probably as not deep as our defense was. We allowed Cleveland to run for 174 yards and average 5.4 yards per carry, which is high, right? Above 5 in the NFL as a running back, you would be one of the top running backs in the NFL. You'd lead the league. But we did a little bit better against the pass. Now, was that because we were going against Dobbs and the other guy? I forget his name. Or is it because our secondary was pretty decent? Could be a mixture of the two, but they only completed 52.5% of their passes. That's poor, and had a combined quarterback rating of 69.7. All right, let's get to some Eagles news. So we are at joint practices today and tomorrow against Miami. Through 14 practices, Jalen Hurts this year has completed 167 of his 244 attempts. That's a 68.4% completion percentage. He's got 22 touchdowns, 4 picks, and that's 355 reps he's taken in practice. Last year, as a comparison, he had 172 completions and 240 attempts. That's a 71.6% completion percentage rate, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and that's in 371 reps. So, while he's not completing the same amount as a percentage, he has way more touchdowns and a few less interceptions. So, how much this all means, right? We're talking about training camp, where the Eagles specifically aren't hitting. We're talking about joint practices where I'm sure people are trying, but let's be honest, it's not, their full effort. So who knows really how much that really means, but just take it for what it's worth, right? I've been hearing a lot about defensive tackle Marlon Tuipulatu. He's making some real good progress year over year in camp, and the coaches are excited. I mentioned earlier, Josh Jobe most likely will make the team. Dion Kane, he's going to make things difficult and might end up supplanting some more veteran wide receivers and make the team, right, with that performance against Cleveland. Apparently in joint practices, Kayvon Wallace and Hassan Reddick have been doing well. Kaiser Wright, who had that interception in the first series last week against the Jets, he's continuing that excellence in coverage through these joint practices. The first team defense apparently did well against Cleveland in joint practices. I only hear about those things. I'm not able to attend, unfortunately. And apparently, Jalen Reagor had a couple of decent contested catches in joint practices. So whether that raises his trade value, who knows? But and again, I've been hearing a lot about Kenny Gainwell not struggling, dropping some passes, fumbling the ball. He did well in the game, so hopefully that doesn't translate. So against Cleveland, I've heard very good things for our receivers, which again in these joint practices they do benefit the receivers. But AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins. Dion Kane's doing well. Zach Pascal, who I think is going to end up making the team and be integral, and John Hightower, all were catching passes and doing well against the Browns. In one instance, AJ Brown had a one-hand catch, and he ripped the ball out of corner Greedy Williams' hands in a contested catch. So that's the physical receiver that we needed, and I'm so glad we got it. So glad that we got to get a nice physical wide receiver. And there's other stories you hear out of training camp. I heard Devontae Smith was productive and just embarrassed Martin Everson. So I'm hearing a lot of good things about our offensive linemen doing well against Cleveland. Early reports as far as practices against Miami. I heard that Slay was doing pretty decent against Tyreek Hill, but then he ended up injuring himself. Stopped practicing for the day, and it was on the sideline. So it doesn't apparently it's not very serious, but something to keep an eye on. That would be significant if Slay gets injured. All right, let's get to some roster moves. So we had to get down to 85. So 85 or down to 80 by this past Monday at 4:00. We waived tackle Jared Williams. We waived running back DeAndre Torrey, which I was a little bummed about. And we waived corner Josh Blackwell. Now we put tackle guard Brett Toth and tight end Tyree Jackson. They're both on the PUP list, physically unable to perform. Basically, that means they can't play for 4 weeks. They don't count towards the 53-man roster. However, after the 4 weeks, they either have to stay on the PUP list or they have to come off and count towards the roster. So we'll have to make a decision about that during the season. And then injury updates. So nothing severe. A couple of people didn't practice today. Jack Anderson for ribs. Go Eagles, Kentu Malik on Instagram. That's right, baby. Fly, birds, fly, right? I'm excited. It's hard not to get. I think it's. Well, I did read that we were in Miami. We were a little bit sluggish, is what I read, and I hate to make excuses. I don't want to hear excuses, right? But I think it was Kareem Hunt said that when you think about our game against Cleveland. Then having a day off, then flying down to Miami a few days later, and then practicing in what I believe is over 100-degree weather. Sure, it can be exhausting, right? Kentu from Instagram. I hope you're right. I hope we win the Super Bowl. I would, if we go to the Super Bowl, I'm going to go. I'm going to go to Arizona. Absolutely, if we go to the Super Bowl, and I would love to see that. I would love to see that. I would love to see it for many reasons, mostly because a lot of our team is young. And if we can get to and win the Super Bowl, if we can get to the Super Bowl, if we can get deep in the playoffs this year, that's exciting for what could be a long, successful run, reminiscent of Andy Reid and our 4 NFC championships, right? So getting back to injuries. Jack Anderson, he didn't practice because of ribs. Sean Bradley had an illness. Christian Ellis has a hamstring. Javon Hargrave with a toe. Josh Jobe had an elbow, just like Kelsey had an elbow. Kelsey's getting his cleaned out. Expected to come back by week 1, but we'll see. And then we have old Miles Sanders with his hamstring issue, which I hope is he recovers by week 1. Kentu Malik, I'm not live. I don't think I'm not live on the radio. I'm live on YouTube, Facebook. But I am on. You can find me already recorded on podcast networks. On all your podcast networks, you can find the Bald Eagle podcast after I'm done. It's posted on all the networks, but it's not live there. I'm only live on social media. All right, Kentu, check my YouTube channel out. I don't stream to Twitch often, but I have one. Well, hopefully, Kentu, I see you there. Hopefully, you and I run into each other in Arizona. Okay, a little bit of not really any NFL news. Oh, you know what? There is one piece of NFL news, and for some of you younger guys, and I'm stereotyping here, you might find this more valuable. But the NFL came out with NFL All Day, which is what I think is going to be the future of clips and instead in lieu of trading cards. So NFL All Day is the NFL's new NFT, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. The new NFT site. So what it is instead of, or in addition to like a trading card, right? We all know what trading cards are, little cardboard pictures of the players. You can purchase an original high quality video clip. And you can purchase packs of them just like cards on NFL All Day, I think it is. They're not nearly as cheap as cards, but you own rights to that NFT. You can sell it if you want. It's very similar to the NBA All Pass or Game Pass or NBA Top Shot. The thing that I think, in my opinion, the way things are going to go is that if they can figure out a way to prevent it from being shared on other sites, which the argument is, hey, your NFT is the original and you can trade it and share it. All the other ones are copies, sure, but who cares if it's a copy, right? But I think that at some point the NFL is probably going to allow people to play clips of games for a window, right? Like, so let's say a week, right? So after all the games are over, 7 days or until the next game start, well, not the next game because that would be a few days, for maybe 7 days, you can access all these highlights on ESPN, NFL.com, all that ever. But then the good highlights are all going to disappear. And the only way you can get them is by buying the NFT. And if they can find a way to control pirating that stuff, it's extremely lucrative for the NFL, because as opposed to trading cards, where if I buy a card and then I sell it, the NFL gets zero money for that. All the NFL gets is the initial rights from Topps and all those places to make the cards. With NFTs, the NFL can put in the NFT that they get, like a 1% transaction fee every time it's sold. So as those clips get more valuable and get resold, the NFL continues an additional income stream. So they did it with NBA Top Shot, and the NBA Top Shot started with new clips. And there were guys that put millions of dollars into this stuff, and in the marketplace you can trade your clips and you can make a lot of money. At least people did in the NBA Top Shot. And when you think about it, there were millions of dollars of people trading these clips, right? And these were the new clips. These were recent games. The NBA didn't even wade into the waters of Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Julius Erving. All of those clips that they could improve the quality of and then sell NFTs for. And I'm sure there are collectors out there that would pay top dollar, and then over time they become more and more valuable, all that stuff. So anyway, the NFL did announce their NFL All Day, so go check it out. I'm frankly a little nervous that clips are going to expire and that I'm not going to be able to, look go to the NFL app and just look at anything. Maybe that'll be the exception, that lower quality versions will be available. I don't know, but anyway, other NFL news. So in the past, the NFL, during preseason and training camp, you could have 90 people on your team. Your salary cap is based on the most expensive 90 players you have. And then you would have to cut from 90 to 53 after the fourth preseason game, right? We don't have 4 games anymore. Now it's tiered. So they had to be down to 80 by this past Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. They have to be down to 53 by August 30th at 4. So we have this preseason weekend. Everybody's got to cut down to 53. So that's happening on Monday at I think that should be Monday. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it's the 30th. It should be the Monday after the last game at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody's got to get down to 53. All right. Not a lot of comments today, or I'd read them out loud, but by all means, if you're watching, if you're listening, somebody on Instagram here is copying Kentu Malik. I'll send you all my information. By all means, comment. I'll bring up your comment live. But we're going to get to the world famous bald eagle fact. So the bald eagle fact, if you're not aware, as part of my show, I always like to reach back into history and talk about some of the most impactful things that happened to the Eagles. I've gone back to our first year in the league in 1933. We've talked about some subsequent years, our the first ever NFL draft, the first Hall of Fame inductees, the first All-Star or Pro Bowl game. So reach back to all these things in history just to kind of learn more about not only just the Eagles, but sometimes the NFL in general. So this episode, we're going to talk about one of our top free agent signings. So I talked about our first free agent signing, which I think it was William Fuller. But this time I'm going to talk about Troy Vincent. So in 1996, I think it was our second ever free agent signing. You have to remember, free agency has not been around forever. For those of you that have been Eagles fans for as long as I have, you'll know that we were one of the teams that got burnt in free agency with Reggie White going to the Packers. Depressing time for Eagles fans, but But that started a lot of it. I think that it was that and I forget who else. But anyway, in 1996, we pulled Troy Vincent from Miami Dolphins. Troy Vincent was drafted by the Dolphins at a University of Wisconsin-Madison, the first round, 7th pick overall. He immediately became the Dolphins starter and helped them make it to the AFC Championship game his rookie year. He had 77 tackles and 2 picks. He played 4 years with Miami. He played 57 games and started 55 of them. He had 14 interceptions and 259 tackles total. So pretty good 4 years with Miami. Back then, Miami was a decent team. They had Dan Marino, right? So they're always competitive, but they didn't have a ton of money. So the Eagles were able to grab Troy Vincent by offering him a ton of money, and the Dolphins couldn't match it. Now, let's talk about what a ton of money was back then. The Eagles signed him for 5 years for a total of $16.4 million total, not per year, right? Total. So he made a little bit over $3 million a year, and they added in a $5 million signing bonus. Miami couldn't compete. So they had to let him go. They had 7 days to match the offer. They couldn't afford to match the offer. Now, the thing that the Eagles did as well and made it more difficult for the Dolphins was they front-loaded the contract. I think he made, out of the 16.4, I think he made somewhere around 4.5 the first year, plus a $5 million signing bonus. At the time, he was the second highest Eagles player ever. Second highest paid Eagles player, right? So he got the most money that we have ever played any player behind one person, and that was Randall Cunningham. We paid Randall more. In 1996, he was the 8th highest player in the NFL, the second highest corner to Aeneas Williams, and he was paid $7 million that year. Emmitt Smith was number 1, and he made $11.5 million that year. So that's actually a decent contract even now, $11 million, right, for a running back. Back then in 1996, the salary cap was approximately $40 million. Currently, it's 250, 200. I don't know. I know that things got adjusted because of COVID, and we talked about that on previous shows. But it's in the 250-ish million range. He played 8 years as an Eagle. Started all 118 games that he played in. In his 8 years, he had 28 interceptions. He had 91 passes defensed, 10 forced fumbles, 518 tackles, and 420 of those were solo. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler from 1999 to 2003. He was a 2-time first-team All-Pro in 2001, 2002. He was an NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year in 2002. He's a member of the Eagles' 75th anniversary team, making him one of the best corners in Eagles history. And he shares the record for the longest interception return in Eagles history. It happened in 1996 against the Cowgirls. He didn't make the interception. James Willis did. And he picked off Troy Aikman 4 yards into the end zone. James Willis ran for 14 yards, turned and lateraled the ball to Troy, who returned the interception another 90 yards for a 104-yard interception touchdown return. He left us in 2004 and signed with the Bills, and then eventually played, I think, half a year with Washington, back then the Redskins, in 2006. Of course, he is in the Eagles Hall of Fame. He's a member of the State of Pennsylvania Hall of Fame, which I didn't even know that they had. And he is currently the Executive VP of Football Operations for the NFL, so still working in the NFL. I did read also that in 2011, he was a second tier or second ballot NFL Hall of Fame, or a Pro Football Hall of Fame, right? Because we know that it's not the NFL Hall of Fame, it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee. So, and every year since, he's been a second level guy. So it's probably only a matter of time until he makes it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. All right. That is it for the Bald Eagle podcast, but don't go for a second. A couple of things I want to go over. Number one, check out all these shows on the Bald Eagle on Philly Sports Alliance. Philly Sports Alliance keeps Philly informed about all sports, not just the Eagles, not just football. For example, on Monday, we have the Football Smack Talk show, and that has Ryan Reese and Eric Ward. I mentioned Ryan Reese is one of the big guys here in Philly Sports Alliance. That is all football, not just Eagles, all NFL. Now, of course, both Ryan and Eric are Eagles fans, so they do talk about them and probably spend a little more time on the Eagles, but they also talk about other teams. On Mondays, you have the Diamond Club podcast at 7:30. That has Chris Lahiff, John Hunter, and Danny Hart. That's all Phillies, right? So we got baseball covered with the Diamond Club podcast. Tuesdays at 6:30, you're watching the Philly Broadcast. That has Ryan Reese and Ryan Finneran. They're talking about all Philly sports. They talk about the sport that's of course currently going on. Of course, when there's overlap, they spend time on all of them, but they talk about all 4 sports: Sixers, Flyers, Phillies, and of course the Eagles. At Wednesdays at 6, you will always be watching the Bald Eagle podcast on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. So check me out. Find out all you need to know about the Philadelphia Eagles. And again, the only and the best place to find the most in-depth play-by-play analysis during the regular and postseason. After my show, Wednesdays at 8 is Mike Sports. That's a football podcast with Eric Ward and Jay Landry. They talk about all the NFL, not just the Eagles. In fact, Eric Ward is an Eagles fan and Jay Landry is a Cowgirls fan. So tune into their show to see some real tension going on. Thursdays at 5:30, Tendies on Pattison. That is a Flyer show with Paul Batcho, Jack Griffin, and Chris Lahiff. So we have all 4 of the major sports covered. And last but not least, Thursdays at 7 is Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. That is a wrestling show featuring Eric Ward and Mike Rouse. So we got you covered on every level. Now, at the beginning of the show, I mentioned that we had a sponsor, right? We had La Terrain as our sponsor. But we have other people that we team up with. For example, the Painted Lines is one of our partners. We stream on their YouTube. I think they stream on ours. Check out the Painted Lines. They have a lot of sports podcasts and things like that. And we also partnered with a Six Pack Coverage. Now, Six Pack Coverage is a huge media company located in Tennessee. Again, we stream to their YouTube and I think their Twitter, and they stream to our stuff. And they don't just have sports podcasts. They have podcasts about fitness, about food, travel, entertainment even. They talk about movies and all that stuff. So go check them out for coverage on a bunch of things, not just sports. All right, I think that's it. I think I've plugged everything I need to plug. Do me a favor, go on to every social media that you can think of, other than like the new ones, right? I'm not on TikTok or Snapchat, right? I'm too old for that shit. Go to Facebook, go to Twitter, go to Instagram, go to YouTube, follow the Bald Eagle. Now be careful, you got to put in the Bald Eagle podcast. If you just put in Bald Eagle, you're going to get actual Bald Eagles. Beautiful as they might be, you won't find anything out about the Philadelphia Eagles. So type in the Bald Eagle podcast or at Bald Eagle 4133 and follow me. Follow Philly Sports Alliance and all of our shows on my left. Your right. This is my left. And let's hope that the Eagles have good practice against Miami. Let's hope that I doubt anybody's going to play. Any of the starters will play against Miami during the game, but hopefully we'll get a little bit of better view of what the roster will look like. And as always, go Birds.